Welcome, everybody. Hello, and thank you so much for being here on Spirit Matters, your daily Bhakti Center podcast. My name is Dayal, and I'm here with Kishore Chandra. Our tri host, Achyuta Gopi, is not with us this week, but we're carrying her in spirit, and we're glad to be here. Thank you for tuning in wherever you're from. Thank you for our live virtual audience for being here. And first and foremost, we'd like to just check in how we're doing. Kishore is getting by. He's getting by these days.
I'm getting by these days. The change of the seasons has really affected me. So from our conversation yesterday about really hearing our body, I'm trying to listen to my body more and just be a little more chill.
Yeah, for those of you tuning in from India, Colombia, or the Philippines, or even Texas. I mean, Texas gets some winter. We have something called seasons here on the East Coast, where the weather changes. Not just hot, more hot, and like unbearably hot. It gets cold and it gets hot, and we're in the middle of a transition. And so Kishore's getting those, I don't know if it's allergies or sinuses or
I think
whatever it
so.
is.
Yeah.
3 COVID tests later, he's negative.
Yeah.
And we remembered that people do just get sick.
Yes.
That's a thing. That is a thing. That is a thing. We've been reading from The Journey Within and this book on Bhakti Yoga by Ranat Swami. And we've been pulling little sections and snippets and tidbits from it. And we are on this section that starts on page 11 called Practicing the Dharma of Bhakti. And yesterday, um, we read this line that talked about the difference between spiritual and material consciousness, that the actions themselves that we perform aren't inherently necessarily spiritual or material or good or bad or elevating or destructive. But a lot of it has to do with the consciousness which we bring into it. That two people can be doing the same thing, but coming from a very different place, and therefore have a very different effect on the consciousness. Um, and this paragraph that we read: everything in the material world can be used for good or bad, or in a higher sense, for spiritual growth or material entanglement. So when we think about the idea of, is this good for my spiritual life or not, or the idea of giving things up, sometimes when we come into a spiritual path, there's this idea that everything in my life needs to change. I need to get rid of everything. I need to clear out my stuff, or I need to stop doing so many things that I used to do previously. I need a life overhaul. And for sure, there are certain things in our life we all have that we all maybe need to be doing a little bit less of, or a little bit more of, or there are some things in our life that you can regulate, and there's some things of your life that maybe you just need to clean, like cut out completely. So there is always some space for that, even outside of spiritual life. Like sometimes just a healthy lifestyle requires certain changes. But what's being mentioned here is that there's a lot of things in your life that can stay. There's a lot of things in your life that you just can transform the way you approach it, transform the way you do family, transform the way that you do career, transform the way that you do your hobbies. When I got married, I had the fortune of having um, His Holiness Radhanath Swami there, and he said something really special at our wedding. And then I realized that he says it at every wedding, and so I felt special. But then I realized it's for everybody. Um, but he mentioned, he said this to me and my wife, and he said that uh uh if you look at your partner and you think that they are your husband or your wife, he said they're not she looked at my wife, said he's not your husband, he's a beloved child of Krishna entrusted into your care. And he said to me, your wife is not your wife, she's a beloved child of Krishna entrusted into your care. And so it goes both ways. And so even when we approach relationships, that this is my partner who's meant to fill my needs and who's meant to improve the quality of my life, yeah, then that's a relationship that's not going to be very beneficial for you or for anybody. But to stay in the relationship and transform that, realize we're both on a spiritual journey and we're here to support each other towards higher spiritual aspirations, then relationships can become an extraordinarily essential part of spiritual life. And he ended on this phrase: when we choose how to use things based on what we want to gain from life. So us choosing what it is that we really want. And then that led us to a place of being honest with ourselves, being really honest about what we want, and being really honest about our intentions and our motivations, and this growing sense of shedding ulterior motives, or at least being clear what our mixed motivations and our needs are. Um, and getting in touch with our inner knowing. And then Kishore brought this devil's advocate point, which he's really good at, by the way, of like, well, how do we sometimes, like, that's not easy. We sometimes can say, hey, we're just being honest with ourselves, but sometimes we're lying to ourselves and we don't know the difference, because the mind is a tricky beast. That, I think that I'm just being honest with myself, but I'm actually just like in denial or telling myself lies or justifying something, and I don't even realize it. And I can go down this really deep rabbit hole of just like not even aware of the way that my mind has hijacked my life. And so, how to distinguish between that inner knowing and the chatter of the mind is
Mm.
sort of where we were churning it yesterday. Um, and I want to ask you, sure, how do you navigate that?
Well, I was giving class this morning and we were talking about this topic actually about and I actually read from the Journey Within in class this morning because I love
Mm,
how Radhanath Swami so simply puts a seemingly very complex principle, the complex principle being that everything in this material world can be used to either further entangle us in material nature, or it can be utilized in higher service, and it can be utilized to further us on our spiritual path. And the decision lies with us. And yeah, I play devil's advocate about, well, sometimes we make bad decisions, and sometimes I might not be able to trust my mind, or sometimes I might not be able to know. And so I'll try not to get too technical because my mind is in like a different space right now from just giving class. And so, yeah, I won't get too technical, but this is actually a principle in Bhakti Yoga. Like it's written about extensively, what Radhanath Swami is speaking about. And it's called Yukta Vairagya. And it's this principle of utilizing everything in the material world, like everything in the material world can be utilized for a higher purpose. And I won't get too much into the semantics of that or what, et cetera, or whatever. But I was reading this purport by Srila Prabhupada, the teacher of our teacher in the Bhagavad Gita. And he's speaking specifically about this term yukta vairagya. Uh, and he defines it, the first part of it, he defines it as, and yukta, it's kind of similar to yoga, right? Huge, to kind of, to yoke yourself to, right? Or to be linked with, right? And so this idea of being linked with the material world, but also being able to be detached from it at the same time, because we're understanding that it's being used in a higher service. However, and this is I think really where the instruction comes in. Srila Prabhupada defines this idea of a person who is practicing Yukta Vairagya as someone who here I'll read directly from, I don't want to butcher his beautiful purport, but maybe I closed it already, so I'll have to butcher it. Well,
but
actually,
butcher it up.
okay, I'm going to butcher it because
Just, 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 just butcher it with confidence, and we'll think it's exactly what was said.
I'll butcher it with confidence. Well, no. It's really simple what he says. He says is that a yukta, or someone who's a yukta vairagya, is someone who is acting in this way under superior instruction and direction. And I
Mm.
think we forget that part a lot, of like, I need to take instruction from someone that is further along the path than I am, and it's such a simple thing that we forget. I forget a lot of the times, because this understanding of that Radhanath Swami is putting is so simple, right? Oh yeah, I can use a knife as a chef, and I can use a knife as a surgeon, and I can use a knife as a murderer. And it seems simple, when it's maybe a dramatic example like a knife. But we've been making the case for the phone this past week, right? Of like, Oh, well, I can also use my phone in Krishna service all the time. I'm just on. Why am I on the phone 10 hours a day that my phone is telling me at the end of the day? Because, oh, it's all in Krishna service. It's all spiritual. I'm all using my phone in a spiritual way. And so we know that's not true. I know that's not true about me.
There
I
are
know.
exceptions to the Yukta principle. TikTok is an exception. There is no positive. No, I'm just joking.
And so, yeah, it's like I can, there's this beautiful principle of everything can be used to take me out of material entanglement and further me along this spiritual path. However, I think having the humility to accept that I need guidance on how to do that is really powerful. Because just to think that I can just do that on my own is going to get us into trouble. And I'm speaking from personal experience. Like, oh yeah, I could use this phone Krishna service, and I can use this, whatever, all this money, oh, all this cars and this one, I could do, oh, it's all in Christian service. It's like, actually, we have to do it under some sort of instruction or under some sort of guidance. And that takes a huge amount of humility. It takes a lot of surrender. We were talking
Mm,
about how surrender is this moment to moment process of how we make choices, but also those choices. I guess I'll end here because I'm really interested to hear what you have to say about this, Daya.
mm,
Those choices shouldn't be whimsical choices. They shouldn't be choices that are just like, I'm just doing it because I feel like it, or I'm just doing it because it feels good, right?
mm.
They should kind of be informed choices. And also, where are those informed choices coming from? Where am I getting my information from? We were
Yeah.
this kirtan training over the weekend, and you were bringing up this point of like, yeah, where is this statement coming from? Whether a teacher is saying something or whether I'm saying something as a speaker, as whatever, like, where is this coming from? Where is my instruction coming from? Where is my guidance coming from? And that's really important as well.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I really have questions more than I have something to share, and I want to volley it back to you. I have two questions. One came up at the end, but the first one is why is it why is it that in every sphere of life, and I think it's a valid question. I'm not trying to be like tongue in cheek or something like, why is it that in every sphere of life we understand the need to learn from people, and there's a natural sense of submission towards people who are further along a path and have information that we don't have access to, whether I want to become a doctor, whether I want to become a lawyer, whether I want to learn painting, whether I want to learn music, whether I want to be a coach or a therapist, or whether I want to, like, be a yoga teacher, like whatever sphere of life it is. I recognize the need that I need a teacher, or I need a guide, or I need a counselor, I need a sponsor in sobriety, like whatever it is. But when it comes to spiritual life, like this flip switches, and it's just like you just got to figure it out on your own. And whatever feels good, do it and follow your heart. And this, like, complete, almost like this disregard or an allergic reaction, or like a disdain. Disdain's a harsh word, but like this icky feeling towards um following a process, or that idea of, like, when you mentioned like superior instruction, I was like, yeah. And I was also thinking like, oh, that probably like cringes in some people's minds to hear that, like, superior instruction, like. And so I was just thinking like, why it's not that we don't get the principle, because we do apply the principle,
I like that.
but why is it that that flip gets switched?
I like this point a lot because, yeah, we were when I was giving class earlier, and we were also talking about this, like that flip getting switched, or that, feeling contentious about certain things or certain points, or wanting to challenge, or wanting to feel like, this seems, I don't know, like, I feel like I'm right, so this doesn't seem right. I don't know, like this. And I think that there's like two answers potentially that can be given to that. I think one is a spiritual answer, and one is more of like a time, place, and circumstance answer. I would say that the simple spiritual answer that comes to my mind, at least, is just knowing, we always talk about this with the Chitta Gopi, the Srila Prabhupada ism of being properly situated. And the majority of us, I'm speaking for myself, are not properly situated, right? Like I'm thinking I am the controller, I'm thinking that I know, I'm, it's not, humility is something that is not really like, I remember we were reading this Shikshastakam, which is a beautiful prayer by a saint in our Bhakti tradition, Sri Chaitanya. And not to get too into that, but a lot of these characteristics of humility and tolerance and not expecting any kind of like awe and reverence, and rather giving that respect unto others. And I remember one of the students in our kirtan training were saying like, this is like completely the opposite of our current society. Like what is
Going against the grain, they
yeah,
said.
going against the grain, like completely going against the grain of what is going on currently in society. And so I think that there's two ways of looking at that answer. There's like a current time, place, circumstance, current society, current, Kali Yuga. This is, in for those that are new that are listening, we won't get too much into this, but Vedic time is cyclical, and there are these like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years that are kind of put into these ages. And so right now the age is characterized as Kali Yuga, and it's characterized by the age of quarrel and hypocrisy. And we can kind of see that, right? There's a lot of quarrel going on. There's a lot of hypocrisy going on. And you can start a fight with anyone on the street really easily, especially in a big city like New York or any other big city, or like literally anywhere, right? There's just stuff going on everywhere. And so we see kind of these spiritual characteristics or these spiritual attributes that are being talked about in this Vedic knowledge as really going against the grain of society. So one of the answers to that, why is the flip being switched, is because we're being further conditioned away from this kind of like the true nature of our soul, or it's kind of further being covered by the stories and the identities and the opinions and the criticisms and all of this stuff of this age. And the other answer I was going to give was just simply of knowing, of being properly situated, like understanding that I'm not the controller, understanding that I'm not God, I'm not Krishna. And you know, I feel like you brought this up during the kirtan training. I feel like there's a logical understanding of that. Like, yeah, I know I'm not God. I know I'm not Krishna. I understand that. But there's a deeper knowing or a realization of in each and every moment, in each and every moment in my life, am I able to accept that I'm not God or the God in that moment? I am not the controller of every single thing that happens in my life. And therefore, like, I'm not going to be, ruling over everything or having this, um, what's the word I'm looking for? Because I can't remember why we were talking about this. Oh yeah, because you brought up this question in context about modern day spirituality and how the flip switches. Like, very simply, one, I think it's like contemporary, kind of like modern age blanket love, kind of society and spirituality, where it's like everything is love. If everything is love, then love isn't love. I love Kadamba Kanan Swami, this prominent Swami in our movement. I remember one lecture from him that it really stuck in my mind, and he was talking about blanket love. And he was like, if you say everything is love, the couch is love, and the lamp is love, and the radiator is love, and the TV is also love, and this water bottle is love, and I am love, and Krishna's love, and the plate is love, and the avocado is love, and it's all love, then love starts to lose its characteristics that make it unique. And we don't understand what that love means anymore. And so I think that's one part of the answer, of just like modern day kind of contemporary spirituality that has put this kind of like blanketism, let's make that word up, over things. And then I think the other answer that's coming to my mind is just our natural propensity in being in this kind of material situation of just wanting to control everything, or wanting to be in control. I want to be in control of my spiritual journey. I want to be able to turn the switch on and off when I want to, and it doesn't work that way. And it's scary that it doesn't work that way. I'm seeing a bunch of comments.
I was muted. I like the concept of avocado love. I'm a fan of that. I think that should be the title of
I
today's
had
episode.
avocado for breakfast, and that's why.
Avocado for breakfast over there. Kimberly, write that down. Avocado love. It's our title. There's Martha was asking this question: do we grow up believing spirituality is so personal, and intimate that we think it's not something we can learn and be instructed upon? And then Reg is also saying, in a beautiful comment, I'll just read the first line he mentioned. This is very important because our Western mind is conditioned to deny authority. But he's saying that like real spiritual teachings show that it's not something it means to be under the guidance. And so, yeah, that's true. And I think just to my question, it's like, I agree that in some areas, the Western mind is conditioned to deny authority. But in other areas, we fully accept the idea that like there needs to be guidance and learning and from instruction and like I was just questioning of like why is it that when we come to spiritual life, that's where like the denial of authority comes in, and even as Martha was saying, like spirituality is so personal and intimate. There's a lot of things that are personal and intimate that we also accept a need for guidance from, like even in relationships or marriage, like the idea of like premarital counseling, or the idea of like, reading books about like healthy relationships or family or parenting. Like there is even to some extent an understanding that even on the personal, intimate aspects of life, it behooves us to learn from people who have some experience or some knowledge. And just one thing that comes to my mind is it's in to in there's two things that come to my mind. One is on us, and one is on the things outside of us. The things outside of us refer to, I think, the way that is and I'm not going to get into this one so much, but the way that power gets abused and assumed, and hurt and pain and exploitation, etc. That it's kind of, there's this backlash against authority because it is so intimate. The level of exploitation becomes so much greater and higher. You know, if I'm learning how to become a doctor, if I'm learning math, if I'm learning, aeronautics, or I'm learning engineering, or I'm learning law, and I find out that the dean of the school, or if there was an embezzlement in the college, or there's some scandal, then it doesn't rock my faith in the science of what I'm learning. It just rocks my faith in that person. And it's like, I got to go to another school. I got to get another class. I'm never taking that teacher's class again, but I find another teacher, right? I don't lose faith in the science. But when it comes to spiritual life, if an individual who we think is supposed to be, we connect the individual with the subject matter so intimately. In other schools of thought, we don't connect the individual with the subject matter as deeply. And so when we connect the individual with the subject matter so deeply, and then that individual has some sort of, and we don't need to state examples of, in any religious or spiritual group that we know of in the world, and have something like that, whether it's on a major or minor scale, then we kind of a lot of times throw the baby out with the bathwater and just be like, well, there's just no sense of trusting anybody, because and then we lose faith in the science itself, and then it's like, I just got to figure this out on my own. So I think that's part of it. And the other part of it, I think that's on us. And I do think I'm using this word towards myself first and foremost, as much as all of us, is where the ego comes in. Because I think in a lot of material fields of expertise and knowledge, there's a lot of times the idea that I want to be greater than my predecessors. Like, I want to be, if you're learning sports, you want to be better than the people that came before you. If you're learning medicine or you're learning engineering, it's like this idea of excelling and being in the best at what you do and being better than your teacher. Like, I want to learn from you, but I ultimately want to be better than you, you know? And there's value in some level of like, that's how things progress. That's how things get better. That's how we push the field forward in engineering and medicine, etc. But in spiritual life, that really gets flipped of like, I never want to be better than my guru. There's always this sense of like, e- ongoingly submissive and humble. And I think that the idea of accepting a teacher in spiritual life um, robs the ego of that yearning to be the best and be on top. And so it's like I don't have a teacher, and then I'm going to be better than all other teachers, you know. And so I think that those two things go together, contribute a little bit to the challenge that we find in spiritual life. But at the same time, you know, that the takeaway for today for me and for all of us is like it's so crucial, as hard as it may be, as you know, um as hard as it may be, um, it's essential.
Mm. I'm laughing because I'm thinking of a meme, so please excuse me, but I think it's apt because you were talking about progress and how progress, like this idea of progress can be good because it, or doing better than our predecessors can be good because it leads us to whatever progress. But there's so much to be said about maintenance. There's so much to be said about just maintaining things and how much work that is and how much the quality of that could be improved, instead of trying to do things bigger and better. And the meme I was thinking of was like, I can't remember exactly the line, but it was like a picture of one of like the upcoming space stations or whatever, and it was like Jeff Bezos or like one of these people like building the first space hotel by 2020 something. This, like, it was just like a ridiculous headline, which was like real. And then like the other picture showed like a person on Earth being like, we just want healthcare. Like, that's all we want. you
Hmm.
know and so the idea of just like trying to, yeah, we're going to space, we're going to Mars, we're doing all these things, like da, da, da. It's just like, and on a spiritual level, it's like we just want healthcare on a physical level, and on a spiritual level it's like, yeah, we just want to uncover all this stuff that's covering my relationship with divinity. And it's like the more and more that we make seeming progress without higher instruction, without proper guidance, it's like the further away we're getting from that, actually, as opposed to
Yeah,
thinking that we're getting closer. Mm.
totally. And I think that, and we'll end here, and then we want to hear some takeaways from Kimberly. I think that what there's so many things in need of addressing in society. We look at it, whether it's I mean, just in America. I mean, what's the latest headline? The next mass shooting taking place in Buffalo. Mass shooting, racism. It's just the next one, and it's like somebody was commenting on it. This that they're like, yeah, there's going to be some candles lit and some vigils. Maybe there'll be a march. The president went and visited there yesterday, the day before, and then we're going to move on. Um, Not move on, but I mean that like in a negative sense. We're just going to like move on, um, without really addressing change. Um, and so whether it's like the recent mass shooting, or whether it's racism, whether it's environmental, whether it's, uh, socioeconomic, like the fact that like rich people got richer during COVID and middle and lower class people got poorer, like the economic divide, like all of those things going on, and we're trying to like plug all these holes. And I was listening to somebody speak once, and it was so true. It was like we there is just a tremendous lack of values guiding society. There's just a tremendous lack of values guiding us. And I think that, wherever you stand spiritually, politically, etc., it's almost hard to disagree with that. And I think that on that level, as you mentioned, that idea of superior instruction where we started, and that uh, discomfort that can come along with that idea, as discomfort as it may be, we really see that more than anything, there's a need for spiritual guidance. There's a need for spiritual renaissance, and individually and in our hearts. And that's take it full circle. But that's why we're here. That's why the Bhakti Center exists. That's why this podcast exists. That's why spiritual communities. We're not the only one. All over the world exists, and it really is. Um, in Sanskrit, it's called par upakar, the greatest welfare work of disseminating spiritual values that will guide us. Radhanath Swami once, it was really beautiful. We'll end here. Um, he was sitting in an airport once, and he was just trying to, this was years ago. Um, and somebody came up to him, and he's obviously dressed in like monk robes, and he's a swami, and somebody asked him a question. He was like, "What are you doing for the environment?" He asked this question. Now, granted, he runs an eco village in Mumbai, and there's organic sustainability, and he's physically actually doing a lot. He gave a different reply about spirituality, and he said, we could clean up all the rivers in the world. We can clean up all the oceans. We can um, pick up all the litter. We can recycle all the plastic. He said, but if our hearts are still polluted, it's just going to get dirty again. It's totally just going to get dirty again. Because what caused us to get here in the first place is that lack of spiritual centering and grounding, and honoring of the earth, and honoring of each other, and honoring of what's sacred. And so he was like, some of us, we all have different roles to play. And he said, my role as a swami that I've taken is to help people reconnect to spiritual value. It's like the beginning of the pandemic, when people literally just stayed inside. Like, it was a real lockdown, like literally nobody went outside for like 2 weeks. I was in New York, and like we went to Jersey once to visit my wife's family, and it was like eerie. It was like nobody for those 2 weeks, whenever it was. And it was like, people could see the horizon of Delhi, and it was like, there was like headlines and pictures of India, like pollution was going away. I was like, this is going to be the best thing ever for the earth. Now, 8 billion disposable masks later, littered in the ground. It's like we're going back to where we were. And so yeah, that need for spiritual development and enlightenment to guide us is so critical. Um, And that's the time we have. That's where we're ending right now. And Kimberly, we'd love to hear a few takeaways from you. We'd love to get a takeaway from Kishore after that. And then we'll wrap up and send everybody on their way.
So for today, my takeaways are transform the way you approach your activities. And we cannot do it all on our own. We need guidance and instructions from people further along on the path than we are. And we need to allow our spiritual values to guide us and clear the pollution of our hearts.
Beautiful. Thank you, Kimberly. Kishore, what's something you're walking away with?
Yeah, I'm walking away with I feel like we keep on saying this. I said this morning, of just really taking the courageous leap to be honest with ourselves, to look at our hearts, and to not be afraid if there is some dirt, if there is some trash in there that we might need to tidy up, we might need to clean up, we might need to sweep up. Because I think we all have that, but not tending to that, like Radhanath Swami was so beautifully saying, is really such a root cause of the problem. So just being really honest with ourselves and taking a good look.
Yeah, that's really important. That's ongoing. That never ends, and so that's a great one. For me, the simple question of who am I taking guidance from? Who am I taking guidance from? Um, is a big one, because it's easy to lose track of that, because that requires effort on my part.
Mm,
They don't just drop into the sky and search you out. Sometimes you have to search someone out, or
mhm,
multiple persons out, and there's a whole lot. Maybe we could talk about that. There's a whole verses and sections of Vedic texts and yoga literature about the nature of seeking guidance, and the mood and the relationship. But that's just the question. I mean, who am I taking guidance from in my life? Thank you all so much. We love you guys tremendously. Thank you for being here live. Thank you for tuning in. Please let your friends know that we're here, we exist, and we want them to become part of our family and join us here at the podcast, or anything else we got going on at the Bhakti Center. Kishore and I tomorrow, we're going on a digital detox tomorrow. So I think we can have the podcast tomorrow morning, yeah? But Friday, no podcast, because we're going to be unplugged. Zero hours on our phones for Friday, Saturday, and half a Sunday. We'll make up for it, though. Don't worry. Love you guys all so much. Please take care, be well, and we'll see you next time.